The Love Talk Show on Liberty Radio.
A relationship is a commitment where both partners should feel heard, understood, and respected. However, those involved in toxic relationships experience the exact opposite. Depending on the nature of the relationship, signs of toxicity can be subtle or obvious, and you may recognize them in your partner or in yourself. Some signs can include when one stops being supportive of the other's goals, when there is no kindness in treating each other, not being positive about the partner's success, being resentful and holding on to grudges, being dishonest about their whereabouts and other important matters, ignoring the partner's needs. Sometimes it is not easy to spot behaviors that could be considered as toxic. Many times, even the big screen tries to romanticize it. In the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, we notice that the characters Andy and Ben both have insincere and ulterior motives, manipulating each other along the way. Andy tries to make dating her an awful experience, whilst Ben puts up with it, accepting situations he actually isn't okay with. Furthermore, Ben convinces Andy to not go to a dream job interview, and just like that, Andy gives it up to be with a guy she's dated for just 10 whole days. Another movie which this time highlights toxic and abusive behaviors is A Star is Born. The movie follows two characters, Ali, played by Lady Gaga, who is a talented singer and musician, and Jackson, played by Bradley Cooper, who is a country rock music star, as they navigate their love for each other whilst dealing with the burdens of excessive fame and addiction. Ali rises to fame as Jackson begins his fall from the limelight. While Jackson continues to express his discontent with Ali's success, she continues to forgive and support him time and again. Jackson is emotionally and physically unavailable due to his drug and alcohol addictions, yet Ali repeatedly excuses his destructive and unhealthy behavior patterns. She cancels a tour to take care of him and then lies to save his ego. Also, she constantly sacrifices to make him feel better, even though he is never happy with her achievements. People sometimes fail to identify such behaviors as toxic or even abusive because most of the time they are unable to see things clearly due to being too immersed in portraying the love story. These relationships are carefully crafted to make others believe that couples were meant to be together forever, despite the fundamentally inappropriate way that they treat each other.
Welcome back to the Love Talk Show. There is, Karina, there is a little confusion about this topic, because when we talk about a toxic relationship, there are people that they think that every problem in a relationship, or even every confront in a relationship, that's a sign that you are in a toxic relationship, which is not true. Toxic relationship, how do you know if you are in one? When you're talking about being in a toxic relationship, you can also be toxic in a relationship. And you can also contribute for a relationship to get worse, and to be even more toxic. And perhaps if you are now in a toxic relationship, you have also to make sure that you are not being toxic as well. Because it's like, you know, for example, as we have now this virus, you know, everywhere. It's just like that, you know. When you are in a toxic relationship, this is just like a virus, you know. If I got the virus and I live with you, there is a great chance for you also to be contaminated, because you are
because we live together.
Yes, even if look, pay attention, please. Let me talk to you here, please, Sha. Let me talk to you here. You know, being toxic is not only when you are oppressing, when you are humiliating, physically, sexually, emotionally abusing. This is also very toxic. But also being toxic is when you accept these things. When you decide that this is the best you can get, you are being toxic as well. Can you understand that? This is a very important, Karina, because I'm not saying that those who are suffering, please don't take me wrong. I'm not saying if you are under this kind of abuses, this is your fault. Please don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. But perhaps, you have already accepted that.
Mm-hmm.
And because you accept that, for the sake of your children, for the sake of, have a roof over your head, for the sake of having someone to call your husband, your wife, for the sake of, whatever, if you accept that and you are doing absolutely nothing to change the situation, you are also being toxic. What is a toxic relationship? We can resume this phrase you see now. Whatever is harmful is toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Again, whatever is harmful is toxic. And, let me repeat. Please don't get me wrong, but we have to repeat certain things to be clear. Because I don't want people, after the program saying that we are taking sides here. Not at all. But when you are in a toxic relationship and your mind start to accept, just like what happened here to Elena and to many others, when they start to accept that, they are also becoming toxic. And this behavior, this acceptance, is also very harmful.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are hurting yourself by accepting that, by doing nothing. And understand, when we say, you're doing something about it, it's not for you to go, okay, let's fight now. It's payback time. Not in that way. Not in that way. Not trying to do the same that, he or she did to you. It's not that, because this will make you even more toxic. But it's a decision of making things different. Starting by you. The question is now, actually, this question was already was answered by people that they were commenting. Why we tolerate a toxic relationship? Why? Because you only tolerate a toxic relationship when you become also toxic.
Mm-hmm.
When you accept that, when you are also contaminated by this virus.
Yeah, you agree.
You agree.
You agree with everything what we received.
Mm-hmm.
You agree. Okay, yes, it's true. I deserve this. Maybe you cry, you complain about the situation, but you accept everything.
Yeah.
Because you don't do nothing different.
Because look, to cry, to complain, that's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's not enough. And by the way, if you are, suffering any kind of physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, the first step to take is to go and report to the authorities. Yeah. Okay? Go and report it to the authorities. And following that, we are here to help you. But let's go now to the streets and see what people think about today's topic.
In your opinion, what is a toxic relationship?
That'll be when two people are not communicating and there's a vicious cycle, so things are getting worse and worse.
I think a toxic relationship is where the power balance doesn't work, where one person feels that they have more power than the other and they exploit that power in an unfair way. That's, for me, what toxic relationships are about.
A toxic relationship can be when there's dishonesty going on and the truth is not being told. When people sense something, they say everything comes from your gut. And when you sense that something's not right, usually that's something you should not ignore. So if you don't have honesty, then you have to question, what is your relationship based upon?
I would say it's a relationship where you're not happy, basically, where there might be some kind of form of abuse, like it can be physical or emotional, verbal.
Have you been in this situation before, or do you know someone who has?
Not particularly, no, not really.
I would say I experienced that myself, and at that time I didn't even know to be honest. Sometimes you're doing it, you don't even know you're doing it. Like, you're just being yourself. You think you're just being yourself, but you're just being selfish, just thinking about yourself. It can be from, like I said, experience it, and I wouldn't say it was just the person, but me as well, because of lack of knowledge.
I've known people, I've been in relationships where it wasn't right, and that's why it is no more. You have to protect yourself. Yourself is number one. You need to question it, look inside yourself, and maybe you shouldn't be in that relationship.
I've seen female friends in relationships where it hasn't felt balanced. I think it's very damaging to someone's self-esteem, and that takes a long time for people to recover from. Not to mention the kind of financial and sometimes, physical damage that it can cause too.
Can you see this little confusion about it? The first gentleman that said his opinion about being a toxic relationship, he was saying that for him to be in a toxic relationship is where there is no communication with people. They don't talk. They don't have a dialogue. This is also very bad in a relationship, since a relationship relies on communication a lot. However, this is not a sign of being a toxic relationship. We had problems of communication in the beginning of a marriage. We had serious problems of communication. She couldn't understand, me, and I couldn't understand her, though we were speaking the same language, Portuguese, which is our first language. But though speaking, clear Portuguese from the same city, same accent, was not a thing, we have different Portuguese accents, because sometimes, we have a kind of difficult to understand people that they are from the north.
Yeah,
people that
different.
Certain areas there in Scotland, my regards to our friends there in Scotland. I'm not bad-mouthing you, okay? But that's not the point. Communication, it is an issue in a relationship that can potentially evolve to be in a toxic relationship. But when you don't talk, that's not necessarily toxic. This is a problem when you have to resolve this problem, and the solution is much easier than being a toxic relationship. Let's go to the last part of the problem. How to repair a toxic relationship. Pay close attention now. How to repair a toxic relationship. Look at me. If you are in a toxic relationship, and if you are going through abuses, just like what happened here to Elena, and to some people that they are also commenting here, your life, is in danger. You are at risk. So the first thing you have to think is not about the relationship. You have to think about yourself. Remember that you are priority over a relationship. You are priority, because think with me. If you cancel yourself, how can you be in a relationship? Since a relationship, what is the idea of a relationship? When you have two that they decide to be together. But if you cancel yourself, you're no longer two. There is just one in a relationship. So there is no relationship. There is just one there, being like, an emperor. Being like, how is the name we use? I forgot the name. No, the emperor, a dictator. That's the name. Thank you, Shad. Being a dictator, so you don't have a voice.
You don't have opinion.
You don't
desire,
have will. You don't have your own
nothing.
will. You don't have free will. You don't have your own will. You don't have desires. You don't have right to think, to speak.
It's always wrong what you think.
Exactly. So this is very oppressive. This is a sign of a toxic relationship. And when you accept that, when you quietly accept that, again, you are also toxic. So if you are in this kind of relationship, the first step, if you are at risk, go and report to the authorities. Second step, think about yourself. Yes, prioritize yourself. And I'm not saying that, out of my mind. This is what the author of love taught us to do. This is what he said. The author of love, the Lord Jesus, he said that I have to love my neighbor. Who is my neighbor? My neighbor is not the one that's living in the next house. But what is the idea of my neighbor? The neighbor is the one that is next to me. So I have to love my neighbor. So even the person that is, the closest person to me, I have to love this person as I love myself. So that's the right measure of love. So I have to, I have to love you just like I love myself, as I love myself. I cannot love you more than me. Because if I love you more than me, I will accept certain things and I will become toxic to myself, and I will give you, this green light for you to also be toxic towards me.
Yeah, it's like you give the direction of my life.
I give you permission, yes.
Yeah. You can take my life
it's
and
the
then
will of my life, yeah.
do whatever you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the idea. You cancel yourself. So remember, the first thing, if you are at risk, go and report to the authorities. Second step, prioritize yourself. And what about my relationship? And what about the man of my life, the woman of my life? What do I do about it? Look, you should prioritize yourself. You have to understand how important is that. Do it first, and for sure you'll be healed.
The Love Talk Show on Liberty Radio.